I should have worn my glasses. Okay, the town. It would not be unfair, in my opinion, to call my first apartment from college a shoddy, health code violating shit shack. The dryer was broken the entire time I lived there. The front office held on to any package I ordered for days, and on one occasion, months, before remembering to give them to me. Once, a few weeks after moving in, I turned a black light on in my bedroom. It was like I was in a planetarium. But hellish as it was, I loved my apartment for being mine. And I'm sure there were worse places to live. Not in America, but like Africa or Mordor or something. When it came time for my 5-week winter break, I decided to spend most of it there instead of back in the woodlands with my family. My 3 roommates were gone, and so was most of San Marcos. I didn't have a car, and the only open business within walking distance was the 50-cent movie theater. But they refused to get any new films until everyone came back from the holidays, so I saw the only movie they had playing, Ben Affleck's The Town, 7 times. For some people, spending a month and a half alone with nothing to do in a mostly abandoned town would be traumatically boring. For me, it was the best Christmas vacation of my life. Most days I would just pace around the apartment listening to music, singing along with it at full volume. I took long showers, not worrying about using up all the hot water or keeping other people waiting for the bathroom. My corner liquor store was selling a new alcoholic whipped cream, which I started spraying on everything I ate. But my favorite pastime during that Christmas break was just walking around San Marcos. There were hardly any other cars on the road, never any fellow pedestrians. Sewell Park near campus had been taken over by deer and turkey vultures, who scattered when they saw me coming like I was the feared king of this deserted town. The San Marcos River is kept naturally warm year-round by hot springs, and in the winter months, steam comes off the surface of the water. Between that, the scavenger birds, and the general emptiness, San Marcos during winter break was vaguely post-apocalyptic, and I realized I strongly preferred it that way. Strongly. I quickly adapted to being alone all the time, and all those eccentric habits people exhibit when they're not being watched became exaggerated in me. I talked to myself in page-long soliloquies. I camped in the living room, dancing to my favorite songs, like all 5 members of the Breakfast Club rolled into one schizophrenic person. One day, I slow-cooked a whole duck and ate it by myself at the communal table, unwatched and unjudged by anyone. I sprayed some of the alcoholic whipped cream on top of it. It wasn't bad. During my bi-weekly viewings of Ben Affleck's The Town, I was usually the only one in the theater. I started showing up drunk and heckling the movie, not because it was bad, but because I could. Really, Affleck? You're playing a robber? You didn't rob enough people when you made Geely? Hey-yo! Huh? All the conventional wisdom I'd heard about being alone at Christmas was wrong. Home Alone teaches us that it's fun at first, but it gets quickly lonesome and scary. Kevin McAllister has a few days of fun, but things quickly take a turn when he realizes he actually misses his family. I had no such realization. My entire 5 weeks home alone were as ecstatic as Kevin McAllister's first few days of eating junk food and robbing pizza delivery men. I guess it did help that, unlike Kevin, no one was trying to invade my home. The only villain in my story was time. I knew that at some point, all of this would end. My roommates, my peers, my professors would come back, bringing the mediocrity of normal life with them. I tried not to think about it, just have fun while I could. But my hermit's holidays soon flew by. And when all the other college kids started moving back into town, depression hit me hard. These returning students were taking my town. I remember standing in an underpass, watching a long line of cars file back into city limits and realizing the best part of my year had just been taken away from me. The only way I'd get it back was for some pandemic to come along and wipe out everyone but me. So as my roommates moved back in, I moped around the apartment, daydreaming about plagues. I locked myself in my room with my headphones and the last of my alcoholic whipped cream, resenting every person and car that passed by my window. I skipped the first week of classes and shifted into a nocturnal sleep cycle, waking at 11 p.m. I felt like I was in mourning over the death of a perfect Christmas vacation. What I didn't know was Christmas wasn't quite over. 2 weeks into the start of the new term, the temperature dropped into the low teens, and the Weather Channel predicted snow. In any other part of the country, this would be a minor setback, but in Texas, it's a natural disaster, on par with the events depicted in The Day After Tomorrow. By 11 a.m., all classes were canceled, and the only thing on anyone's mind was the possibility of snow. So, what do college kids do during inclement weather? Well, the same thing they'll do for a birthday, or a football game, or a bris, if we ever had one. There was a kegger. By 3 p.m., a newly filled keg was chilling in the cold on our balcony. Other people in the building were planning parties too. Every fridge was being stocked with the regional college spirits of choice. Carlo Rossi wine by the 3-gallon jug. Keystone. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Ziegenbach and a few handles of bargain bin vodka. There was the distinct possibility by midnight, we'd have a full-blown block party on our hands, and I didn't like it. I sequestered myself in my room. I decided to try to get drunk enough to sleep through all the noise in the living room, and for a few seconds, I made it. Then, wham, my bedroom door flew open. A guy in a backwards cap stepped in and looked around. "What are you doing here?" he asked me. Residing. "Nice try, man. I know the guy that lives here. You're not him." 4 people live here. I'm one of them. I watched the wheels turn in his head as he evaluated my assertion. "Hey, you think the guy who lives here would be cool with me smoking a bowl?" I guess you'd have to ask him. I locked my bedroom door and followed him out, pouring myself a glass of cognac. I found a coveted seat on the same couch I'd had all to myself 3 weeks ago. A chatty blonde girl named Brittany, sitting nearby, asked, "What's that you're drinking?" It's Hennessy." "Hennessy? Ew, why are you drinking Hennessy? That's a nig drink." You ever heard somebody say something so stupid it's kind of brilliant? There were so many individually wrong components in that sentence. It was like a team of scientists and poets designed it, trying to come up with the wrongest statement in the world. Where do you even begin to respond to that? I guess you start with the racism, right? You say something about how just abbreviating the N-word to nig doesn't really give you a free pass to say it. Then you move on to how Hennessy is actually a French drink, made in the cognac region, as all cognacs are. You explain that it's popular in the UK and Italy, it's on the rise in Russia and China and Japan. You speculate that it may have turned out to be a mainstream drink here in America, if not for the phylloxera grape virus of the mid-19th century that made the drink largely unavailable to American consumers. Then you guess that Brittany called Hennessy what she called it because it started to become popular in American hip-hop culture, which is still no reason to start throwing around the N-word. You think of all this, but you don't actually say any of it because the person you are talking to thinks your cognac is a nig drink, so what's the fucking point? Instead of answering her, I just stared at her for a second, shook my head, got up, and walked out of the house into the icy night. I was halfway down the block, still walking off my bewilderment, before I realized I was wearing a t-shirt and jeans in 12-degree weather. My fingers were already getting numb, and so was my face. I downed the Hennessy in a few gulps to stay warm, but within 10 minutes, my hands were totally numb. I had to slap my cheeks to get the slightest sensation. It was a harsh and bitter cold, but it was still preferable to the inferno of douchebaggery blazing in my house. I've been outside for 15 minutes now, and I hoped I could make it at least 15 more before my fingers fell off. I closed my eyes, put in my headphones, rocking back and forth to pass the time, and then I heard a scream. It was the loud, high-pitched female scream from every horror movie. I opened my eyes, jumped up, and ran towards it. People were crowding the street outside my apartment. Everyone was loud and frantic, and that's when I realized it was finally snowing. Within minutes, the ground was covered in a white powder, utterly alien to most of the partygoers. People were ecstatic, running and slipping all over the road. Snowballs started flying, and since everyone was drunk, the snowball fight quickly descended into an actual fight. Four guys charged into each other and piled on the ground. Someone's dog showed up and jumped on top of them. A cute girl who lived across from me collapsed into fits of hysterical laughter. I saw the guy in the backwards hat who had barged into my room earlier lumbering towards me. "Hey, it's this guy," he said, grabbing me a tight hug. "I love this guy." I laughed to spite myself. It was around this time that I got what I thought was a contact high. In an emotional 360, my melancholy drunken stupor dissipated, and I couldn't stop grinning. Between the booze and lateness of the hour, this first and last snowfall of the year had emotionally overloaded everyone. Maybe I was genuinely excited in the snow as part of this big, noisy, obnoxious crowd of college kids, though I would have never admitted it. Then again, maybe all my lightheadedness had to do with a prolonged exposure to the cold. I guess I'll never know. It kept snowing for another half hour. Everyone quickly burned out and went to bed, leaving me with the empty living room I had so badly wanted. But I was more interested in the snow. I put on a jacket and ventured out again. The roads and sidewalks were empty. For the first time since New Year's, I had the town to myself again, and San Marcos looked good in white. Later that morning, the temperature did eventually rise, and I watched the snow disappear yard by yard. Exhausted as I was, I decided to stay up through the rest of the day and fix my sleep schedule. Classes resumed in the afternoon, and I actually went to them. For whatever reason, I was finally ready for Christmas season to be over and for the new year to start. And that evening, I went back to the 50-cent movie theater and bought a ticket for the King's Speech, because finally, the town was gone.